Good evening. I call to order the regular session of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. It is 6:30. We have a quorum present. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the March 19th, 2024 meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by Francis. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. Minutes are approved. Next item is a regular hearing for a preliminary plat of Lewisville Business Park Edition, lots 1 through 12, Block A, on 226.3678 acres, pardon me, of the Peter Harmonson Survey, Abstract 530, the H. Turner Survey, Abstract number 1248, the J.T. Cosby Survey, Abstract number 1567, and the Jesse Watkins Survey, Abstract number 1327. This is Zone Plan Development Light Industrial District, located generally along the north and south sides of Spinks Road, west of South Valley Parkway, and east of Duncan Lane.
Good evening, Commissioners. This preliminary plat is associated with the Valley Parkway Business Park Plan Development that appeared before you on October of last year. Staff found a list of deficiencies with the first submittal of this plan development and recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission deny the preliminary plat and grant staff the authority to approve it once the list of deficiencies has been corrected. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this plat.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood. You said this first appeared before us in October?
It is associated with the plan development that appeared before you in October.
Oh, okay.
The zoning.
This is a separate thing.
The Valley
Okay.
Parkway Business Park Plan Development.
Okay, I misheard. Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff on this item? If not, may I have a motion, please?
Move to disapprove preliminary plat due to deficiencies and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve once listed deficiencies are corrected.
Motion is by Aram. Second is by Rick. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. The next item on the agenda is another regular hearing. This is for a preliminary plat of Josie Lane Residential Edition, Lot 9, Block A, lots 1 through 21, 22X to 23X, Block B, lots 1 through 18, Block C, lots 1 through 23, 24X, Block D, lots 1 through 14, Block E, lots 1 through 25, 26X through 28X, Block F, lots 1 through 34, 35X, Block G on 47.641 acres out of the R.F. Hardin Survey, Abstract number 613, the D. Cook Survey, Abstract number 234, the T.A. West Survey, Abstract number 1345, and the B. Schoonover Survey, Abstract number 1209. This is Zoned Plan Development Estate Townhouse District. It's located on the east side of Josie Lane, approximately 3,000 feet south of Windhaven Parkway.
Commissioners, this preliminary plat is also associated with the plan development for the Josie Lane Residential Plan Development that appeared before you back in February for the zone case. Staff reviewed the preliminary plat and found a list of deficiency and recommends that you disapprove the preliminary plat and give staff the authority to approve it once all the deficiencies have been corrected. Happy to answer any questions about this plat.
Thank you, Jonathan. Commissioners, any questions, discussions for staff? No? Okay, then may I have a motion, please? Motion is by Rick.
Motion to disapprove the preliminary plat for the deficiencies listed above and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the listed deficiencies are corrected.
Motion by Rick and seconded by Jack. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 4 on the agenda for this evening is consideration of one alternative standard associated with window requirements for a religious facility on approximately 2.674 acres out of the Eli Pickett Survey, abstract number 1014, zoned local commercial district, located at 175 Bel Air Boulevard, approximately 570 feet west of the northwest corner of Bel Air Boulevard and South State Highway 121 Business, as requested by Marlon Marquez, the Wright Group Architects, on behalf of Chin Evangelical Baptist Church, the property owner.
Good evening, Commissioners. The Chin Evangelical Chapel Baptist Church is an existing use that hopes to add a gymnasium and some additional parking. Through the engineering site plan process, a need for an alternative standard for the ground floor window coverage was identified. This is not feasible to provide windows within a gymnasium. Per the Unified Development Code, Article 6, Chapter 8 requires 40% of the ground floor facade facing primary arterials to be made up of windows or doors. The applicant is proposing an alternative to use a dark-toned brick mix to replicate the shape of windows to mimic that pattern. And let's see. There we go. You can see it in this image there. That what the alternative they're proposing. Staff finds this alternative standard to align with the purposes and intent of the UDC and that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Moreover, it maintains harmony with the overall objectives of the local commercial zoning district. The modification is being kept to the minimum necessary to address the unique conditions related to the development. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the alternative standard as presented. I'm here to answer any questions you may have, as well as the applicant.
What are those faux, fake windows consist of, or made of, the dark part?
They're just the same brick that's going to be used elsewhere. It's just
Okay.
a darker color to replicate that. This type
I see in the other picture, okay.
Yeah. This type of alternative was also approved for another site a couple of years ago. That was a shooting range. So that was another example where it wasn't feasible. And so they kind of based what they did off of that alternative standard.
Okay.
It's actually a different brick, different with that color, or are they painting the brick?
It's going to be a different brick.
Different brick.
Anything else for staff? Any questions for the property owner? No? If there are not, may I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve the alternative standard as presented.
Second.
Motion is by Rick, second by Karen. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0.
Commissioners, this item will be considered by the City Council for a final decision on Monday, May the 6th, 2024 at 7:00 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, number 5 on our agenda for this evening is consideration of 3 alternative standards associated with landscaping, building envelope, and architectural standards for a quick service coffee establishment on approximately 1.104 acres out of the Hebron Lake Point Edition, Lot 3R1, Block A, zoned General Business District, located approximately 55 feet east of the southeast corner of Hebron Parkway and Lake Point Drive, as requested by Patrick Cauliflower, Foresight Group, on behalf of Dutch Brothers Coffee, the property lessee.
So Dutch Bros Coffee, they already have a location on Main Street, and they're now hoping to add a second establishment on Hebron Parkway. And so during the engineering site plan review process, we found the 3 alternative standards they would need. One is they are hoping to replace the required parking lot landscaping island with a landscaped green area containing shrubs and canopy trees. There we go. So you can see in this image that they had already met the required quantity of trees that we request are 1 tree per every 8 spaces. They were just hoping to, instead of putting that landscape island in the middle of this row of parking spaces, to use this larger green area. And it was originally just going to be turf grass, and so they're proposing to put additional street trees and shrubs as landscaping beyond what's required to alleviate that. The second alternative standard they're requesting is to reduce the required building orientation requirements by 100%, and that the longest side of the building must be oriented towards the highest category roadway. As a quick service establishment, they don't feel that that is makes sense for the use type, but to alleviate that, they've done an elongated canopy to add more visual interest along the roadway. And also on the back of the site, we have a trail easement, and so they are proposing enhanced pedestrian amenities. They're adding trash cans, benches, and street trees along that trail. The last alternative standard is to reduce the required 40% ground floor window requirement by 26.9%. Again, as mentioned earlier, as a drive-through establishment, they don't feel that the high quantity of windows makes sense with their use type, and so they are proposing a 29% deviation. But otherwise, the facade meets all applicable standards for architecture with the masonry and the articulation. This is what they proposed in terms of the building facade. It's very similar to what they have in their Main Street location. Additionally, they have the additional landscaping on the green area and then the pedestrian amenities on the back to meet those standards. Staff feels that these deviations will enhance the extending the green initiative with a comprehensive plan, and it'll soften the transition from the roadway to that trail in the back with the additional street trees that are going to be added. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the alternative standards A, B, and C as presented.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Nope. Okay. Any questions, Jack? Or are you just thinking?
No, I can't resist. Can you describe their neighbors?
Yeah, so let's go back to the aerial. That might be useful.
They're all quick service restaurants. So you've got Taco Casa and you've got Jason's Deli.
Yeah.
That are immediately adjacent to the west. To the south, you have the apartment communities and the ponds. On the north side, there's an office building, and there's more room for future office or other types of commercial development. So the alternative standard here, the significant one with the building orientation, we worked with them quite a bit on that one. The intent with the building orientation is really to engage the street to help make it more of a pedestrian-oriented type area. I think here is a little bit of an uphill battle given that there's a bunch of quick-serve restaurants and a gas station right in the immediate vicinity. And secondly, our trails plan does call for a trail along the levee ponds that are right there. And so our intent with this, and we encourage them to provide pedestrian enhancements along that pond, to really kind of upgrade that as a pedestrian area so we still have some walkability even if it's not really engaging on 3040 Hebron Parkway.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now he asked a question. Now I'm going to ask one now. The rest of the land right here that's adjacent to it, that's, is that land available to develop, or is it somehow?
The land to the east is undeveloped, and there is some interest in it, but it would be developed with a different user.
Okay.
And with the developing of the the trail easement on the rear, and they're kind of setting that standard. And Dutch Rose has exceeded what Parks requested in terms of the width of the pavement for that trail pathway. Additionally, with the pedestrian amenities, they reached out to try to do the same benches and trash cans that the City Parks Department uses. So they're trying to keep that consistent. So for those future developments, it's kind of setting that standard.
Okay. Anyone else?
One quick question, is the trail just going to be installed in that one piece? What's the long-term expectation of it connecting to something?
So they won't be responsible for the additional connections or anything like that, and that'll be something our Parks Department will have to work through. But the long-term vision for the trail's master plan is to encircle all of those ponds.
So in the next year, they'll install as it's drafted here, but with just grass on either side for foreseeable future?
Are they installing, or is this just an easement, because it's kind of a small portion? They're installing.
So that's part of, they're installing the pathway as well as the benches, the street trees. Am I able to zoom in on this? No, okay. The street trees, the benches, the trash cans back there. And then the ESP is still going through revision, but in the last set of comments, Parks is working with them to have where the pavement ends there to be set up for the property that goes in next door to just easily continue that pavement.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, if there are no further questions or discussion, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve alternative standards A through C as presented.
Motion by Karen. Second by Rick. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0.
Commissioners, this item will be considered by the City Council for a final decision on Monday, May the 6th, 2024 at 7 o'clock p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is a presentation, which is an update on the Business 121 Corridor Plan.
Good evening. I know some of you are also part of the Lewisville Ambassadors Group, and so may have heard some of this presentation as part of that group. But I wanted to give the Planning and Zoning Commission official update on the Business 121 Corridor Plan and where we're at with that project. Just as a summary, why are we doing a plan for Business 121? It's a major thoroughfare for Lewisville. It connects residents to commercial areas within Lewisville and beyond. For a lot of people, it's their gateway, it's their first impression into Lewisville. And what we're looking to do, what we're expecting the outcomes of this to be, are to improve the look, feel, and functionality of the corridor. We're trying to identify areas where we can make improvements for safety, beautification, and economic development. So those are our main goals with this project. So the study area is 8.4 miles. It is owned and managed by TxDOT. So there's limitations on what we can do with the actual roadway itself, although TxDOT and us do have very similar goals in terms of safety and traffic management. We are looking at a half-mile buffer area. It's a roughly 10-minute walk shed, and that's to help inform the economic vitality. One of the things we're doing, and I'll talk later on in the presentation, is we're looking at catalyst sites or catalytic sites to see what kind of development we can use to kind of spur reinvestment in the area. So where we are right now in the project schedule is on phase 3. Phase 1 was really our consultant team coming in and gathering a lot of the background data. We also did phase 2, which was where we did our initial outreach events. So right now we're working on developing what a vision might be for the corridor, what some of our goals and our larger strategies might be. We'll then take that back out to the public and to key stakeholders to sort of refine that and calibrate it for the city of Lewisville before we finalize the plan, hopefully in this fall. So In the corridor-wide analysis, we looked at the context, we looked at all of our existing plans, the assets, the land use, the population profiles. We looked at the existing mobility networks in terms of safety, access, driveways, crash analytics, commute characteristics, and connectivity with different kinds of modes of transportation, including sidewalks, bicycles, making sure that there's adequate tie-ins to the DCTA train station, those types of things. We also have a sub-consultant that's really diving into the market trends, and so they're looking at trends in industrial, residential, retail, office, and hospitality. So we have divided the corridor into 5 sub-areas that are based on the existing character and built form within those sub-areas. And so you can see we've kind of got the east end over here where Business 121 connects back on the east side with the toll road over towards Castle Hills. We've got the Elm Fork Leela section in the middle, which is where you're going by all that natural area that is Leela in the Elm Fork River, even if you don't necessarily know it when you're driving by. You've got the Old Town section where Business 121 goes south of Old Town. You've got the Corporate Drive area where you're south of 35 going to almost 3040, where we have a lot of residential, we have a lot of neighborhood serving, commercial, those types of things. And then when you go south of 3040, it changes into more of a warehouse office kind of format and a different sort of streetscape. So those are the 5 sub areas that were created. So with the phase 1, they did prepare, we do have an existing conditions report that looks at those sub areas and the characteristics of the built form in those areas. It also looks at the roadways and where we have intersection issues. It looks at those little blue lines on this map indicate where there are sidewalks, so any gaps in those blue lines indicate gaps in the sidewalks. It also looks at the railroad crossing, so just trying to get a really good sense of the context of the corridor as we go. And the key takeaways from that finding were that Business 121 is a gateway to Lewisville, but it doesn't always feel like it. A lot of people, it's their first or only impression that they have of Lewisville, but it doesn't tell our full story as a community. The Old Town connections in particular are hidden away, and people don't know that that's there. People might not know what Leela is when they go by. Cars are evidently the king of the corridor. Everything on the corridor is oriented to the automobile. The sidewalks and buffers vary. In some sections, there's actually quite a lot of sidewalk, but it never feels like it meets the scale of the roadway in general, and it never feels quite comfortable to walk on it. And we need to make aesthetic improvements on Business 121, but to make them really effective, they need to make sure that they're coordinated because these, as individual properties redevelop, meeting the standards of our overlays or different plans isn't quite getting the impact that we need. So we want to look at doing some sort of more coordinated aesthetic improvements. And the entire corridor needs those aesthetic and functional improvements, but the same interventions won't work everywhere. We have these different character areas that we need to address. For the mobility analysis with phase 1, what the key findings were is the motor vehicle accident hotspots are at the intersections. This is for motor vehicles, so Bel Air, Corporate Mill, Southwest Parkway, and Valley Ridge. They did our consultant team went out there and did intersection audits to kind of identify what some of the key problems were at those intersections. Also, with pedestrian and cyclist accidents, those are mostly concentrated in that Corporate Drive area south of 35, north of 3040. And many of those are actually located away from intersections, indicating that there's not adequate safe crossings for people to get across from one side of the roadway to the other. There is a high number of driveways along the corridor, which really does impede traffic flow and creates safety issues for users. And a lot of times there's driveways right adjacent to an intersection, which obviously can be problematic. One of the most common destinations, though, for any trips originating or ending along the corridor is home. So that's where people tend to be going or to. And then also one of the major intersection issues is the lack of lighting and the unsafe pedestrian crossing and visibility issues. Looking at the market analysis, some of the key takeaways were that there's a strong growth in the multifamily residential market that's limited by land capacity. We've seen a lot of that multifamily growth recently. In the Castle Hills area, Crown Center, there's some under construction there, and also in the Old Town area, there's multifamily under construction. And we want to target any additional multifamily really into the Old Town infill locations and not along the rest of the corridor. So despite the fact that the market summary is very strong and would likely support it everywhere, I know our goal as a city is to keep that in Old Town. For sale residential also is having strong market performance, particularly for detached housing. So there could potentially be opportunities for creative redevelopment of shopping centers. We did have a meeting today where looking at retail per capita, we're on the high end. So maybe that's something that we dive into a little bit deeper. Industrial, there's substantial new industrial development. However, the priority really needs to be on making sure that we're having industrial development that really is generating jobs and is compatible with the other uses on the corridor, or it's going in the appropriate locations along the corridor. Office is still a very limited market ever since, even really before COVID, but since then it's still a very limited market. Retail, the majority of new investment is single tenant, smaller structures, and that goes back to there is actually a lot of retail space along the corridor today. And so really we need to look at how do we reinvigorate that space and make it people reinvest in the space that's already existing. And hospitality, again, has a limited near-term market opportunity just because of the economic conditions that are more widespread at the moment. So those were kind of the key takeaways from the initial market analysis. From the public and stakeholder input, we did a lot of outreach. We didn't get maybe as much response as we hoped for based on that outreach, but we did get a lot of response. We had over 200 responses documented in activities. 71% of our survey participants did live on or near Business 121. We had 20 folks participate in a holiday stroll activity. We have 26 surveys that were completed in English and in Spanish. We had 50 stakeholder conversations that included our government officials, residents, community members, business owners, property owners. We did host a community-wide town hall. To prepare for that town hall, staff actually delivered flyers to every business along the corridor, which was a significant time and energy investment. Unfortunately, we didn't have great attendance. We also did reach out to the schools, the elementary schools that are along the corridor, so that they mailed out flyers in English and in Spanish to their families to see if they would come and attend that town hall as well. So I think when we go back for additional input, we're going to do more of our focused stakeholder meetings because those seem to be more effective and have a higher response rate. But the ideas and opinions that we heard were that the priorities that most people had were that improving the appearance of building along the corridor was a top priority, as was making it easier and safer to walk. And then kind of tied for number 3 was supporting business and economic growth and making it faster and safer to drive a vehicle. And then in 4th place would be increasing tree cover, shade, and green space. People said things like it feels dangerous, the traffic is terrible, everybody wants a curb cut. From the business community, we heard that Business 121 corridor has been a place where you find resources, not retail businesses, and I think there's different sections of the corridor where that applies. Because I think everyone, when they think of Business 121, tends to think of one particular part they travel regularly. So words for today are traffic, congested, busy. Words for tomorrow are safer, traffic, and space, entertainment, greenery. So we can kind of see that we know we're going to have to manage this traffic. I think that's not really going away, but we are looking at how the corporate drive extension will hopefully alleviate some of the traffic flow on Business 121. So our draft vision statement as we move forward right now is that Business 121 will remain a vital transportation corridor for the region. It will be a vibrant place to live and do business and will serve as a proud gateway into Lewisville. The Business 121 corridor plan includes strategies to support the overall vision that are in 3 themes right now. So mobility, quality of place, and economic vitality. And mobility, I want to just mention that is not just vehicle mobility, that includes pedestrians and bicycles and other modes of transit. And so we might broaden that statement to make sure that we're explicitly saying pedestrians and cyclists and all those modes of transit. Quality of place is really talking about the aesthetics and the overall feel and experience through the corridor. And then economic vitality is really strengthening the economic position of the corridor and encouraging that reinvestment. So we asked the council for their initial input on that vision, so I wanted to ask you guys too for your initial input on that vision, and then what you think the corridor what success would look like for the corridor. So I'll put back up on the screen what the draft vision is so you can reference it.
Is there any plan to do this similar to the I-35 overlay? To change some of this?
The I-35 overlay wasn't a rezoning, it was design standards that lay on top of the existing zoning. It may be that that's a recommendation that comes out of this plan to do an overlay, but I don't think that it would be the same type of overlay where it's one overlay that is the entire length of the corridor. I think the context zones on this corridor are fairly different, and so we might have to approach that a little bit differently.
Okay.
Any other feedback on that as a vision statement?
No, I mean, I think it encompasses pretty much everything that we were verbally throwing out there at our meeting a couple of months ago. So I think it's pretty comprehensive. It's packaged nicely.
What has occurred? There were some things over the past year or two. I know speed, right, was reduced. I believe it was reduced slightly. And then what about the timing of signals and things of that nature? Has all that been already exercised and in place at this point?
So yeah, TxDOT did the speed, we took that forward, but yeah, so the speed limit was lowered slightly. That is done. The signal timing study is not done. That's something that we think we need to do, and making sure that those signals are all coordinated well. And so I think I can bring Cyril, our traffic engineer, to talk more about that if that's something y'all would like to hear more about. But that has not been done yet, no. Okay.
I think the vision is, by and large, very representative of the conversation I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the economic vitality component, I still am drawn to the fact that we have so many very distinct zones. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to draw something that is one size fits all for all of it. I know that the 121 to corporate area is something I see every day, and I know that I'm interested in seeing some of the economics behind it, the vacancy rates, the ratings of the centers, and are the capital improvements there. But I can see this being a great step forward to that.
Thank you. And we can provide some of that data to you all as well. Okay, so for phase 3, what we're really working on right now is establishing place types and then also looking at catalytic site developments. Right now, the neighborhood and corridor framework plans are being worked on. The mobility and circulation framework plans are still being worked on, as is the traffic assessment and distribution modeling, and that's really to make sure we understand traffic impacts with Corporate Drive, with the Mill Street realignment, with some of those major changes. And then also looking at the economic market forecast for what we feel like the future has, and then looking at some concept plan refinements. So the place type frameworks do reflect a lot of things from our 2025 plan, as well as from zoning and the existing conditions that are out there today. So there's 9 place types. 2 of them are really residential neighborhoods, which focuses more on single family housing, and residential mixed use, which is more of the multifamily, but where you're adding in commercial components. Our green centerpiece really is celebrating just that, our green centerpiece from our 2025 plan. The corridor commercial is the retail and professional service establishments. A mixed-use node is intended to be more dense, large-scale developed areas with that mix of residential, office, retail, entertainment uses. We have the Old Town District, so that's looking at the Old Town as that continues to grow and move east with the transit-oriented development area, making sure that we're really tying into Old Town in some areas. Looking at our industrial legacy buildings, which are our longstanding small-scale industrial buildings, the wholesale trades and auto-oriented uses, and focusing on efforts to improve the built environment in those areas. And then looking at our industrial transition, which is kind of that area between the Old Town District and the industrial legacy place types, trying to help facilitate that shift more towards Old Town from what is our industrial legacy, which there's so much of it that portions of it probably will be there for quite some time. But then also looking at our industrial economic centers, which are more of our large format, sometimes more modern industrial centers. One thing that we're going to be using, and we'll bring back before you when we have a little bit more detail to show you, is using ArcGIS Urban as a scenario planning tool and as a visualization and modeling tool. It's really great because it does help you create 3D visualizations and simulations to better understand spatial relationships. In addition, you can put in some assumptions about what that space entails and how that would impact traffic and how that would impact economic development and those types of things, which allows you to do some cost-benefit analysis and really support long-term planning. So the 3 catalytic sites that we're working with are the Mill Street realignment area. So this is the area where Mill Street is being realigned to intersect Business 121 farther north than it does today. That's to provide better spacing from the intersection with I-35. It's going to line up with the driveway into the Northwood Mobile Home Park, but that does provide some opportunity for redevelopment. The second area is the Bel Air and Lakeland plazas. We're kind of combining those 2 older plazas together. It totals 41.6 acres. We have some rather large underutilized parking lots. So we're trying to think of different creative ways that we can encourage reinvestment in those areas and make those more productive uses. This is an interesting site because it's very highly visible. It's very accessible from I-35. And there's not too many property owners, so if they were on board with the plan, you could easily see something happening there. And then we have a smaller retail center that's in pretty decent shape at Southwest Parkway and Business 121. We wanted to include this one because we're already doing a complete street project on Southwest Parkway. So between Business 121 and Southwest Parkway, we're doing a lot of work in this area. We've also got LaGlory Park, which is happening on Southwest Parkway just off this plan. And that park should be opening fairly soon. It is a smaller scale strip center. There are 3 different property owners, and in this one, maybe it's not so much wholesale redevelopments, but it's how do we kind of invigorate the existing center? What can we do here that we could maybe replicate in other centers along the corridor in the city? And so then I just wanted to talk about the next steps. Again, are the further scenario development for those catalytic sites, doing a neighborhood and corridor framework, the mobility and circulation framework, doing a traffic assessment and distribution modeling, and then getting more details on that economic market forecast. And I wanted to kind of give you this update tonight because we're a little bit over a month out from our joint meeting with the City Council, and I wanted you all to make sure you were on the same page as they were going into that joint meeting. So I'm here to answer any questions, or if you guys have any suggestions or feedback, I'm happy to take that tonight.
Off the top, anything right now? We can always reach you at your office if we think of something.
Absolutely.
Have you guys started doing any design plans, or is it still information gathering, or?
We've done, not design plans for future improvements, no, but we've done a lot of kind of looking at what's there, documenting the existing conditions, and then using that to kind of facilitate. So that'll be the next step.
Okay, anything? Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Do we have any announcements this evening?
I did want to introduce our new planner, Lauren Cook, who's here tonight.
Lauren?
Lauren
Hi,
Cook,
Lauren.
yes.
Welcome, Lauren.
She is grew up in the area and recently completed a master's degree in urban design in London. And so we're happy to have her on our team. I also did want to say that our next meeting on the 16th will be a joint capital improvements advisory committee meeting. And then it's our first meeting in May, I believe it's May 7th, that we will be starting at 6 p.m. so that we can do that joint meeting with the City Council following our regular meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And that will be reminded.
Yes.
Thank you.
You can keep the email?
You got one email. What do you need?
When we send out that agenda, we will certainly send a reminder, and I'll probably remind you at the next meeting as well.
In bold.
It's on a Monday.
Okay. If there is nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Aram,
Second.
second by Francis. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned.